Hi there. For my active learning assignment, number two, I chose to pick a short story by Edgar Allan Poe, and the short story that I chose was The Mask of the Red Death. This was a short story written in 1942, 1940s, 1942, um, and it was an incredible story, really. Uh, you know, talking about the plague or a plague that was coming through, and some of the stories or things that unfolded with it, where there was a prince called Prince Prospero. He basically quarantined himself and about 1,000 of his good friends and family in one of his fortified castles because he wanted to get away from the plague. He didn't want to die, and he just basically chose some of his friends and family to come with him. His hideaway, it was filled with everything that a large group of people would need to live vicariously on while waiting out the plague. I didn't know what he was thinking, how long or short it was going to be, but Poe wrote in the story there were seven elaborate rooms that all had different colors to them, different shapes, just different. It was kind of a weird um, arrangement of rooms, I guess. It wasn't like a wide open room. They had like there was drapes that fell, and the colors of the walls matched the window panes, and it was kind of elaborate. But I don't know what the colors really elaborated upon in his mind, but in my mind, what I thought of the seven different rooms, what it could have possibly signified, like the different stages that we have or go through in life, ourselves, young to old, or in between, battling sicknesses, stuff like that. So I thought that was kind of neat how they had seven elaborate rooms that were within the story. There was one In the seventh room, there was one gigantic clock of ebony, is what he called it. So a big, huge, dark grandfather clock is what I pictured in my mind. It was situated on the western wall of the room, and I would coin it the death room, I guess, because this was like a blacker room with dark black velvet trim along the window and drapes along the windows and the walls, and they had this candelabra or a candle stand shining red like a stained glass, and it made it look dark and deathy and red and blood and just really kind of weird. But the clock itself, it would make an ominous tone like every hour on the hour as a reminder that time is passing. And this would cause the revelry or the party the group of people were doing to momentarily cease, and until all the clanging and the clock was done making the noise, and the dancing and the music would just continue on. They would just go on about their day or their life or whatever within the story. Up until the very 12th hour, there was a mummer, is what they called. It was like an actor. They thought it was like an actor or somebody coming in, that he comes into the room, he comes into the party, he makes his appearance wearing grave clothes, and disrupting the festivities. Everybody's kind of like a little leery of him. They weren't sure as to what was going on, but he's wearing grave clothes. Prince Prospero, he tries to capture him. He doesn't take too kindly of him wrecking his fun and his time together, but alas, death hath no mercy. Prince Prospero dies while trying to capture him, and then a group of others try to um, uh, capture the mummer as well after Prince Prospero dies. And then the mummer, as they were trying to grasp onto him and hold on to him, the mummer turned into an intangible force. It was like a ghost, so to speak. It was just the clothes that they were grabbing onto, and then the mummer, he just brings forth the Red Death plague into the fortress, and just everything dies. Everybody dies, including the clock. The clock stops going, the lights turn off, the candles shut off, or blow out, or whatever you want to call it. And it was just like the last flicker of light, and then everything just ceases. And my perspective on the story, it was a really great story. It was my perspective on it was that, like, no one can sidestep death, no matter your stature in the community or in your town or in this world. Death is inevitable, whether you have a lot of money or not, rich or poor. Death is just it's a great equalizer, to be honest. So I enjoyed reading the story. It was great. How does it pertain to restorative art? So some of the questions that we had to answer, what was the cause and manner of death of the character in the story you selected? I mean, it was an acute plague. It was fast and deadly when it happens. It They told of it like it would be like from the time you catch the plague and you start tremoring and seizuring, and it's all within a half hour's time that you die. So it's very, very quick. It's not an ongoing process. It's just a quick acute plague. It devastated the country, and it devastated Prince Prospero. How it did it was blood would seep out of your pores, especially in the facial region. It would seep out of your pores, poured out of the pores, other orifices, but the face was the big thing. I think that's why they call it the mask of the Red Death, because your face would bleed out. But it also came with sharp pains and sudden dizziness and seizures and grimacing on the faces, and those are just some of the other noteworthy characteristics of it. So my timeline of treatment, if I were called upon to restore these remains, first thing comes to my mind is, would I be able to? With a plague, I'm not so sure it's going to be sanitary. It's not going to be sanitary, but let's say we throw on our hazmat suits and we have plenty of disinfection, and we're following the bloodborne pathogen rules, and but I'm still not sure if an embalming would even be, or even a viewing would be a good choice, or sanitary for that matter, or safe for the community and the public as a whole, because that's what we also have to be aware of is public safety as well. Probably not, but let's just say, for the sake of conversation, that we decided to have a visitation in the service and everything's on okay with the plague. I would disinfect. I'd be hazmated, suited up, wearing probably double gloves, mask, the whole 9 yards, obviously. Wearing our PPE, but I would disinfect and embalm the body while cleaning it up as best we can. I mean, we got to get everything clean, dry, embalmed, with blood excreting from the pores and orifices of the face. It's going to be a challenge, but it needs to be done if we're going to have a viewing. I would probably choose to do a restricted cervical injection using a higher solution for the trunk, and then that's going to allow me to use a higher index solution for the trunk than the face, so that I don't dehydrate facial features. But it would be a case specific, obviously. This will also allow me just time to clean the face and set the facial features before embalming the face. And honestly, I don't know how the solution is going to react to the body with blood coming out of the pores. Was it just the face? Was it body as well? Making sure that the solution will stay within the vascular system and not secrete out the pores is one thing, a topic on my mind that I would be looking for, I guess. I would choose to do a delayed aspiration and cavity embalming, just to make sure that if there is some seepage or something, that it has all the time that it can get to preserve the body itself, and make sure it's doing its work. So how would the lessons of anatomy and facial proportions as presented in this class apply to your particular case? From question number 3, with the seizures and grimacing that the plague had brought with, the decedent may have encountered, some, I would say, facial restructuring, not necessarily reconstruction. It just be more or less making sure that the muscles of the face and the neck are somewhat relaxed, get them to be movable and pliable so that we can move them in a way that's going to be conducive to a natural look for the individual. Knowing what the natural and acquired facial features that were pronounced on the Prince Prosperos, and how to accentuate that look is going to be extremely helpful, and that's what we've learned in reconstructive art, or restorative art, excuse me. And then obviously with anatomy, just regarding knowing the anatomy of the person, knowing which vessels to raise and when, and how that's all going to be conducive to a positive embalming result is just the knowledge that we need to have in order to do these things that we're going to be doing. And so again, what methods and techniques would I use to achieve an open casket for this individual, for the prince? As stated before, I would use a restricted cervical. I would inject the trunk first, make sure that everything's going to stay within the body. This will also allow me to see how the body is going to react to the embalming process before I inject the face. As noted, I will also use a higher index for the trunk, higher index solution for the trunk. That way I can make sure that everything's going to go through well with the body, and then I won't dehydrate the face as well. But I will, like I said, using a higher index solution, I probably add a little bit of humectant to it. I don't know what has left the body, if there's going to be some dehydration issues or not. I don't think that's going to be an issue. But to be safe, I would probably add some humectants to make sure some of the moisture can stay within that body as well, because we may have, depending on how many people, we're talking about Prince Prosperous, but depending on how many people, I don't know how long of a wait it's going to be before he can have services, right? So just making sure that the embalming is going to take. And then after embalming, I would just keep a watchful eye on how the vascular process works, and making sure to use a topical solvent or possibly hypodermic if needed, if it doesn't go through too well with the vascular system. This could produce multiple vascular injections if need be through the trunk. I would also have to just assess the situation in real time. But if the body does not allow the embalming solution to leak through its pores, I would do the best to clean and preserve the body and use topical and hypodermic injections on the facial features. I would allow time for the embalming solution to work its magic, and perform a delayed cavity aspiration and a delayed cavity embalming, but I would also be using a higher index cavity solution as well. And then after the body has been preserved, brought back to a natural look, I would begin dressing for the casket. I'm going to utilize a Unionol, make sure that if there is leakage or seepage in any orifices or any pores, it's going to be caught in the plastic garments, having absorbent powder in there with it, probably some other powder that's going to make it smell good as well. And then really it's just a matter of getting him dressed, getting him set in the casket, and just constantly watching throughout the process of the services, and making sure that there's no further leakage or no further issues that we would run into. So that's my presentation. Thanks for listening.